Welcome back to another episode of Rob Sports Center. As you can see by the title and by the thumbnail, we're going to be breaking down some film on Cam Ward from his first NFL preseason game. We're going to get straight into it, man. So you see the very first play, man, they're in a shotgun with a single back, one running back in the backfield. Tampa Bay, obviously, Tampa Bay is a team that's going to that's going to dial up some blitzes. They dial up a blitz right here. He does a good job at, just being able to get the ball out of his hands. So if you look, if you look at, I forgot what video was that I was looking at. It might have been Jackson Dart. It was one of Jackson Dart or somebody, I forgot. And I was just talking about how he was only looking at one side of the field, just doing half field reads. But if you look at Cam Ward right here, he kind of does a full field read. You look at him, he starts from the right and he kind of works his way back on to the left, and he sees that he got like the little sit down route right there. So he does a good job at being able to read the defense and get the ball out of his hand pretty quickly. And he actually got it out right before, like right at the sticks. That could have been a possible first down, but the DB just made a pretty good play at being able to get his hand in there and disrupt the pass. So on this play right here, you got to have a situation. You got a 3rd and 6. You got 3 receivers bunched up on the left side, and then you got the running back who released into the flats. Tampa Bay. So what Tampa Bay did was they ran a stunt on this play. So we're gonna take another look at it. So if you look at the outside defensive lineman, he showed as if he was going to rush from the outside, and then he ended up bouncing it back into to the B gap blitz, and that made Cam Ward kind of roll out of the pocket. And I was kind of trying to look and see if that defensive lineman actually really had a shot at getting him. But I think that with Cam Ward, obviously, guys that have the athleticism to be able to maneuver around, a lot of times, if they feel that the pocket is collapsing or if they feel that they see a blitz coming, they feel like they can outrun the blitz. And so he just rolled out of the pocket. The only thing with that is when you roll out the pocket now, you limit yourself to one half of the field because obviously you don't want to throw back across your bodies. And I think that's kind of what it was. He kind of just ran out of real estate, and he just did a good job of just trying to get rid of the ball and not making a bad play or even worse play by either taking an unnecessary sack or possibly throwing an interception. So right here, you got a 1st and 10 play. So the defense never really was able to kind of get set. I feel like it kind of was confusion in the secondary. And I think that Cam Ward kind of did a good job at identifying that, because if you even look at exactly where the confusion came in, that's exactly where he ended up throwing the ball to. But he had all the time in the world right here. I think they only sent the 4-man pressure on him right here. We only rushed 4. Well, no, they actually did send an extra backer. Now, one thing I will say, even on one of the earlier clips earlier too, is even with Pollard does a good job at being able to pick up those blitzes, because in one of the earlier clips he did the same thing, and then he also did the same thing here. So he did a good job at picking up that blitz to give Cam some more time to try to be able to scan and read the field and make a play. Obviously, one of the things I do like about Cam is like the fluency in his footwork. You look at when he dropped back, and you look at kind of when he is dropping back and he starts to kind of bounce. It kind of puts you in the mind of what we seen Brady do, and not just Brady, but several other good quarterbacks as well. But to me, it does a good job at, like, kind of when you think about boxing. Like, I always use boxing as an analogy. When you think about boxing, a lot of the times, everything you do in boxing, you want to maintain your stance because you want to maintain an offensive position and you want to also maintain a defensive position. So regardless of whatever you're doing, whether you're pivoting, whether you're moving forward, whether you're moving laterally, you always want to remain in your stance. That way you can be ready to be defensive and you can be ready to be offensive. So that's what I equate that to in terms of his quarterback stance and kind of being able to, kind of stand on the balls at his feet and bouncing up and down. It keeps him in a rhythm, and it keeps him in a position to throw the ball. So he just does a good job at hanging back there in the pocket with the time and eventually reading the field and being able to find someone open. And once again, he does a good job this time, kind of going left to right in terms of reading exactly where the defense was at. And he just kept his eyes downfield and obviously went to one of his playmakers, who is Calvin Ridley. So right here we got a 1st and 20. So they're well behind the sticks, and I'm assuming there probably was some pre-snap penalties with illegal shifts, illegal motions, probably false starts, things of that nature. So they're starting at a 1st and 20. So they're in a shotgun formation, single backfield once again with Pollard. So Pollard actually releases out into the flat, or releases out into a route on this play, opposed to having to stay in the back and pick up a blitz. But that's only because they rush 4. Offensive line once again does a good job at being able to keep the defenders at bay to allow Cam Ward to be able to complete this pass right here. So another thing too is, most of his passes we've seen have been from the shotgun. So a lot of the times, why would you run shotgun? It gives you an opportunity, especially for younger quarterbacks, to be able to kind of read the defense a little bit better, opposed to being under center. Being under center allows for you to be a little bit more prolific with your with play action, because you can sell it a lot better. But being in the shotgun just allows that quarterback to be able to kind of read read the defense a little better. So he does a good job at, just putting his hand over the underneath corner. And I know some people might say, man, that probably was a risky throw. Well, when you get in the NFL, you have to understand one thing. For one, it was going towards the sideline, so that wasn't as bad. But then you have to understand that when you get in the NFL, the separation from play to play is not going to be as great as it was in college. You know what I mean? So you're going to have to get used to making those tight window throws such as this one right here. But he just does a good job at being able to kind of float it over the corner's head so he couldn't have a shot at it, but then also not allowing the safety who was driving over the top of it to be able to have a shot at it as well. And you see the connection between him and Calvin Ridley once again. So that's going to be a beautiful connection over the course of the season. And it gives him that option of having that guy, that go-to guy, the guy that I can count on, just like how he did right here. And once again, he does a pretty good job at kind of getting rid of it, throwing with anticipation, just, trusting that he's going to be there. The ball kind of was already out of his hand by the time Calvin really kind of ran that out route. Let's take another look at that again. The ball was already out of his hand, and that's an anticipation throw. And if you heard me talk about, if you watched any of my other videos where I was talking about Shador Jackson Dart, one of the things about quarterbacking is that you have to, when you're reading as a quarterback, right? The anticipation throws helps with when you like most quarterbacks, they throw to the receiver once they see that he's open, right? But you have to understand one thing. As soon as you see the receivers open, the defense sees that the receiver is open too, and it allows them to be able to have a chance to make a play on the ball. So throwing with anticipation, it minimizes the opportunity for them to be able to come up and get a pick or even just get a PBU. All right, so on this play right here, we got a 2nd and 10 play. Second and 10 play, my bad. They send Calvin Ridley in motion. So you can tell that they're making it a priority to try to get that bond strengthened between Cam Ward and Calvin Ridley, because a lot of what they're doing has been going to Calvin Ridley, and they've been doing a good job at kind of being able to maneuver him around and not really let defenses really just key in on him. I mean, we've seen him lined up on the outside, on the left side. We've seen him lined up on the right side. Right here, we see him lined up on the right side. He motions in and kind of comes into like that inside receiver. And really what they just did really was just give him a head start on that route. And he just pretty much ran a drag route. And honestly, he just ran away from the DB. Cam Ward once again did a good job at, just putting the ball in a good position where he can get to it, and, also protecting him. And like I said, once again, when it goes to those anticipation throws. So what I didn't get a chance to finish saying was that, when you throw with anticipation, you try to minimize the opportunities of the DBs being able, or the defenders to be able to make a play on the ball, whether it be an interception or pass breakup. But then also too, if a defender realizes that they're not going to be able to get over there in time, what's the next best thing they're going to do? And they're going to try to hit you to knock the ball, to try to draw the ball loose, So it keeps your receiver protected as well, because by the time you get the ball to him, he's able to brace, put himself in a better position and not be as defenseless as he would have been had, you not throwing with anticipation and you waited until he was open and the DBs was already able to drive on the ball. Because as soon as they see you throwing the ball, they coming downhill, and now he got his helmet knocked off on the sideline. You know what I mean? So he does a good job here at just being able to, kind of really honestly just throw him open. And that was something else I was saying too. It's like when you get to NFL, the distance, like the separation play to play, it becomes so much smaller because of the guys become so much more athletic. Guys become so much knowledgeable about, when it comes to film study, preparation, understanding what it is that you like to do out of this formation, understanding who your go-to guys is, and they try to key in on that. So you have to get acquainted to throwing in tight windows, just like this one right here. And sometimes you got to kind of throw the receiver open right here, because it wasn't really a lot of separation on there. He just did a good job at kind of putting it out in front of him and allowing them to kind of just run underneath it and get a hold to it. So the last play right here, we got a 2nd and 10. And this almost kind of turned into a disastrous play right here. It looked like they were kind of playing some type of high-low coverage. It might have been some type of variation of a cover 4, being that the corner kind of just jammed and then was in a trail position. Now I'm not quite sure if he thought that the corner was going to sit in the flats, kind of like a cover 2, but the corner jammed and kind of just sat in the trail position underneath. But then you also had a safety that kind of was coming over the top, so that kind of was just a dangerous play right there. Once again too, that goes back to like what I was saying in terms of like kind of throwing with anticipation. Now, not necessarily saying that was what he done, done. A lot of times too, that it's a double-edged sword with the throwing with anticipation, because if you and that receiver are not on the same page, those plays can end kind of disastrous, because a lot of times that'll be the interceptions you see where it's just a corner or a defender sitting right there and he's just wide open, and it's almost like the quarterback was throwing to him. It just was miscommunication right there. But I think he kind of just might have thought that possibly he could also fit that ball into that tight window. I think that he thought that it was much more separation between him and that corner than what it really was on there, but it didn't end up an interception. But that comes down to, like, when we talk about, categories in terms of like quarterback dominance, a good quarterback play, it comes down to obviously accuracy. It comes down to decision making, and it comes down to just leadership. So right there, that kind of wasn't the best decision to make right there. Especially being that you're already kind of in the red area, you in a position to where you can put points up regardless if it's a touchdown or not. You down 10-0, so any points will help. So if you throw an interception, turn the ball over right there, man, that's a possession that you lose, and now that's possibly 3 points that you got off the board. You know what I mean? And plus, it's a second down play too, so you live to fight another day, even if you don't get the completion. But I think that it probably was, a little bit miscommunication there, and I think he kind of probably thought he could get that ball in that tight window. But I like the thing about it though, is I like the aggressiveness. You know what I mean? I like the aggressiveness. I like the fact that you're not timid and that you're not so scared to making a mistake that you're willing to, kind of be a little aggressive in a sense. But sometimes you got to kind of know the down distance in a situation and kind of just know, like, well, I don't need to take no major risk, because for one, we don't want to lose field position or possession because of a turnover. And two, we got another shot at it because we do have a third down play. But overall, man, I like what I seen from him. Just like I said about the others, Jackson Dart and Shedeur, he didn't look rattled in the pocket. He looked calm. He looked composed. He never once looked like he was kind of shook in a sense. You know what I mean? He looked comfortable. Like I said, I like the active feet, like how he does like the little hop right there, and just kind of staying in throwing motion. I like the fact that he was actually kind of analyzing and reading the full field. That was something that I didn't see from a lot of the other guys. He was reading, most of the other guys were just reading one side of the field, but, he would read the whole full field, whether it was from left to right or from right to left. And obviously, too, I like the connection I seen with him and Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley is going to be that go-to guy for him. So it's good that they can kind of build that connection, that camaraderie now. That way, when week one does come, we are able to see a lot more of those anticipation throws from him, because he got the belief that Calvin Ridley is going to be where he has to be, and Calvin Ridley has the belief that he's going to protect him with his ball placement. So with that being said, man, let me know what y'all think about Cam Ward's debut game, man. How was it to you guys? But, man, that is it for this video. If you guys did enjoy this video, do me a big favor, man. Smash that thumbs up button. Also, if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe. When you subscribe, make sure that you got that notification bell on. That way you be notified every time I upload. And I'll see y'all in the next video.